Welcome, everybody. My name is Fabian, and welcome to another episode of Kids on the Stoop, where we talk about TTRPG things around the space in the community. Um, I have a very special guest today. Very special because I'm a big fan of this person. You've seen them previously in our other shows like The Take Back and Midnight Rush. Uh, Ambrose, please introduce yourself and tell
Hi.
people what you do, where they can find you, where what
All the
everything, all
things.
the
All the
things.
things. Hi, everybody. I'm Ambrose. I go by any all pronouns. I am the creative director and founder of Other Cider Studios. You can find me everywhere as SS Ambrose or SS Ambrose underscore because some of those places, someone apparently is SS Ambrose too, which, okay. Um, uh, Whatever. Or Other Cider Studios or Other Cider Studios underscore studios or something like that. So, I am the storyteller for the award-winning Arcane Core series and the award-nominated The Melancholy Weave anthology series. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm really excited.
Hell yeah. Um, yeah, Melancholy We Weave and Arcane Core, they play into the horror genre. And
Mhm.
if you guys don't know Ambrose yet, most of Ambrose's library, both performances and GMing, are horror. Um, they're a wonderful performer in the genre, in the space, and that's what we're going to talk about today. How horror kind of relates into our space, why we love it so much, and why it's so important for people of color like me and Ambrose um, to tell stories about it. If you're hearing a meow in the background, that is my cat Tyson, who is just wandering the halls. Um,
I
but
love that.
to get to it, so Ambrose, I know why I love horror. You know, there's a lot of like uh anger it lets out. It's fun to get scared. It's fun to feel things. But why is horror so captivating? And why do you choose that genre to focus most of your performances and your story?
Hmm. Well, I like well, I've said a couple of times to some people, like just casual conversation. I used to absolutely actually hate horror. It mostly obviously because during the time that I was growing up, it was gore, like gore fests. So that would be like Final Destination,
Like
um, uh,
Hostel,
the Hostel,
like the Saw
Saw.
series, yeah.
And I'm just like, what is this for? And I got really sad because, specifically, Final Destination 1 didn't really have that much gore in it. It was just kind of like a story of people that escaped death and then death coming to find them. But even that storyline was like, it was lacking something, is the best way to put it, but it was still a good concept. And then it just went into gore time. And that made me really sad. I didn't really touch horror until Silent Hill, the movie. And Silent Hill was like a video game that I liked, like that I wanted to like play, but definitely couldn't because my anxiety was through the roof every time I tried. And that also had gore in it with Silent Hill, but the story was so interesting in regards to like, hey, someone going to a hidden small town looking for their daughter and being taken to another place and not understanding what that place is, and it essentially being a reflection of your trauma, a reflection of other people's trauma, and how people are viewed, and how that view is determined monstrously. And I thought I was like captured by that, even though it was still scary. Like I was very scared. And it was still like bloody, but with a reason. So it wasn't just like, yeah, let me just like murder like, like it's just like, let me just kill everything. Everything had a purpose. And that made me really think about like, hey, oh, horror can be psychological. Horror can be more than just a thing's gonna get you. It could like play on our emotions. It could help us reflect parts of ourselves. Um, it helped me a lot with grief, specifically. Um, Again, I loved horror, but like I didn't want to pick up the storyteller hat until like a year after my dad passed, I believe. And seeing how deep and complex grief was, and then the horror of how that might represent itself, or things could always get worse than this pain, and then how do you come out of that? And horror being able to be a really interesting reflection on that. Also realizing a lot of horror movies had that element of, oh, a family member is going to pass, a family member has passed, or like a loved one has passed, and now you're trying to find some solace.
Some
But then this other
catharsis.
thing, this some catharsis, something,
Yeah.
and then this thing comes out of nowhere that is just like now you have to contend with it. And usually you're using your trauma, your grief, or maybe something that that person left with you to probably help you in some way, shape, or form. And that's what I started with, and then it kind of branched out into other kinds of horror that just make me so excited to like just test it out. So yeah, this is me.
Yeah. I s- I relate to that so much. Um
Mhm.
because like as someone also who has lost a father recently, it like the catharsis that you feel, like you kind of understand like what the people in the movie or in the story that you're watching or reading or listening to are going through, where it's
Mhm.
like you're grieving but there's other things that are happening. It's just like real life where you lose a family member and you're still kind of like there's bills to pay, got to go back to work,
Yeah.
you know. um and like horror does give you that solace of like you can fight back against these like pressure, despite experiencing not necessarily a big loss, but like loss altogether. Because it doesn't matter how, it doesn't matter what the size of the loss is. Like loss is loss, and people take it how they take it. Um,
Yes.
it's funny too because like I was also like a giant scaredy cat. I remember getting traumatized by my grandmother, um, locking me in a room with them, watching Children of the Corn because she wanted to watch it, and
Oh, no.
she didn't understand how scary it was for me. She's just like it's just a giant tube eating children. Like what's so wrong with that? And and like me, I'm just like it. I'm a child. I
I'm a child. That's my fear. I
it's
don't wanna be eaten, grandma.
exactly. But I grew out of it, and like now I do a lot of horror stuff. Um, but yeah, horror is such a pivot. It's a pivotal thing that came to us in certain parts of our lives. Um, what do you think about horror in storytelling in relation to experiences in people of color? Because like we see a lot of like horror, like Final Destination. I don't think they had a black cast member until like the third one, maybe.
I think so.
Yeah, and like it definitely horror from a perspective of a person of color is completely different. I mean, like just look at Get Out, look at Vampires of the Bronx.
Mhm.
Like these stories. How does that? What do you think about that relation between like people's experiences as people of in like storytelling?
I like that, in, like, those cases, there's other things to worry about for us than what, like, a white person might worry about. For a white person, it's very, like, or at least it feels superficial, hence why, like, with Final Destination or something like that, again, not saying all, but the ones that I grew up on, I was like, "Okay, torment, torture, death, sure. Like that is a lot of people's fear. But for black people, like or black person or femme person in general here, like with intersections, there's a lot of things to worry about. There's a lot of other anxieties that we have that are different and they might represent something different on in horror. So a good example in my opinion, though it's not extremely horrifying, but like still, like Sinners is another example
Yeah.
of like, hey, like being so close to the picture of freedom, and then not only, I'm sorry, and also spoilers to anyone that didn't watch it. So like, I'm just
If you
gonna put
haven't
that up
watched
there.
it, like,
I don't know what are
what
you
the fuck
doing.
you're doing?
What are we doing?
Yeah.
Please watch it. But spoiler tag here is like, hey, they bought a juke joint, and that was like, hey, I want to be free, and I want to express our joy, and I want to express all after everything that we've been through. To find out like, oh, there's vampires that are coming in because they crave something that we have, which like the gift of music, and telling stories through music,
Mhm.
which is blues. And that was like a deep history as well. Uh, but then also finding out in the film that like, hey, if they didn't kill you, like the KKK was going to come and kill you.
Yeah.
Um, and even the protagonist like had a feeling something's off, but it was just overshadowed with hope.
Yeah.
And that is like a stomach drop realizing that. With Get Out, it's like, hey, we're in a modern time. Like, yeah, I have a white girlfriend. I'm going to see her family. They might ask some weird ass questions, like that. I'm like, oh, that's just maybe like because I'm not sure. Like maybe like they're asking me these questions, but as a person that's in a interracial couple, like because my partner is like part white, but most of their family looks white or is white, um, and being in the middle of nowhere,
Mhm.
nowhere near my family because they were in Connecticut, and I would like take the Metro North train to see them sometimes in the middle of nowhere. I
Yeah.
was like, I don't know what they could do. But they were good people. It didn't really matter. It was just like, but that was that fear of like, hey, I'm isolated. They can do anything technically. Um, and in some cases, unfortunately, it does end that way where like, hey, the family actually did have like were racist and they did do something to that person.
Yeah.
That's the I don't know if you know this exactly. Well, like I'll bring it up. I grew up where my mom didn't want me to go to sleepovers in general, because of depending on who it, even if she knew who it was, like she would have to know them inside out, our friends.
Yeah.
Um, she's like, I have to know them because I don't know what they would do to you depending on your background.
Yeah.
Even if it's another black family, I don't care. You're not going. And she didn't tell me that until I was like 25. And I was like, I wish we had that conversation to talk about it. Because, like, now in hindsight, because I listen to enough crime documentaries, I've seen that. I've seen black
Yeah.
kids go missing, or wind up dead because they went to a neighbor that they thought they could trust.
Yeah.
Um, and unfortunately, sometimes it either doesn't get solved or it eventually gets solved, but years later because they wouldn't do that to that black baby.
Yeah.
Um, and that's a horror of us, like specifically for me, like targeting our black children that just want to enjoy life,
Yeah.
and or like I just want to be with my partner. Doesn't matter what their race is or background is. And then I go into a situation where their family turns out to be very racist and they're complicit or aren't sure how to navigate it because they're learning themselves or they don't even know what's right or wrong. So those are horrors that we have to deal with. And they might not seem horrifying until we put ourselves in those situations.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that was like a realizing that Sinners was personal because like blues and the history of blues is personal to me
Mhm.
as well. So I was just like, oh, I felt really tied to my family on my dad's side with that. But yeah, like also seeing more black movies, black horror movies is like
There's
said is just whew.
there's also this there's also this like kind of realization by a lot of people who don't have the black experience with um racism extending past hate, right? Where like in Get Out, perfect example is like, you know, a preconceived notion that black bodies are physically stronger and better, and so on and so forth. And having that like kind of like idea, um a preconceived notion of that to a person of color, um plays into like racism. And it I think it's wonderful that we get to explore these stories now, because like it kind of opens people's eyes of like their ignorance about their own complicitness in like racism and hate crime. Um and yeah, like I think it definitely differs. Like you're right that like white storytelling is like very, not in a bad way, superficial, but like there are certain types of fears that are featured in the forefront of things, um compared to like Asian horror, where a lot of like the horror surrounds not just the ghost, but the ghost encapsulates and embodies a trauma, a
Mhm.
generational trauma that kind of repeats itself and kind of like assails like the characters and the people in the story. um so like I think you kind of like got into um this other question that we have, but maybe this is more of a pointed question. In genre, in terms of AP, why are you drawn to horror more than any other genre? Like, you know, there's not a lot of people of color that tell like fantasy stories. Even though we do have our own lore in our own like general cultures. I mean, I understand that even in like African American cultures, there is a different idea of fantasy, um, or even like comedy or anything. Why horror in particular? What was the draw for you, and why do you want to be like, I want to do APs about horror in the lens of like personal.
It's a good question in general. And I had to think about it a little bit because I was like, hmm. I I'm not saying gonna say I'm not a big fan of fantasy because like I think fantasy is really cool. I like urban fantasy and anything. But I grew up like watching like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. So and they were very entertaining. The Hobbit, so on and so forth. The story of Journey, um, like that would be the closest thing I could think of. And I used to like those things, like watch it on a regular basis. Um, uh, and then I think about why did I decide to the storytell here, and why does it like not spark the same amount of joy from growing up that it did before, even now. So like if a friend of mine wants to watch like fantasy or something like that, I'm like, let's go together, but I'm not going to seek it out. Um,
Mhm.
uh, I like the dark. If it's not horror, I like the dark or gritty stories. I like the stories of like John Wick, I guess, is like an example of not a horror movie, but like high action. There's a lot of violence in it, but it all started because his dog died. You know what I mean? So like that's a very interesting point of someone snapping and then just like burning the world down because of it. Because like, hey, after everything I've been through, you take the one thing, like kind of thing. But horror wise, the storytelling devices and layering that story has in horror is the most intriguing thing to me because it's a mixture of sometimes you need to be investigative depending on the type of horror it is. So, for instance, Arcane Core is action and investigative horror.
Mhm.
Um, and it's an urban fantasy, dark urban fantasy. So it's just like, hey, you're going to see some kind of messed up things because of the nature of what you're looking into. But there's also going to be breaks of tension because, like, so it's very supernatural. Of like, hey, yeah, like it's going to be creepy sometimes, and then you're going to have like a really funny Dean Winchester, Sam Winchester moment that like calms you down, and then like the vampire just came through the window, or like what is it, like a doppelganger, or it was one of those, I forgot what it's called, but like they take the shape of people. I'm gonna say shapeshifter, but I don't think that was what they named it. Like that was a horrifying concept. And we follow trauma of somebody. We follow, like, find out what's going on with our cast members, our team members, while they're trying to get to the bottom of something that's actually quite horrifying. In Arcane Core, it is like a nemesis known as the Doll Maker who has broken out of jail because they've been orchestrating trying to escape containment forever, and they literally take the essence of somebody and just devour it, essentially, and then just take that person's body as a host in a hive mind kind of situation. So it's just like, hey, that person's gone. Like, they're not coming back. And that's their fault, and they have to process that too. Um, and it's a personal horror of, I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want that to happen to anybody else. It's my fault that they're out in the first place, but also they've been working on this for a while. What do I do? And then, oh, this person is after a teammate of mine. And they want that teammate to what end? I don't know. So it's a personal horror part of it. And then, like, we got to continue this story. Um, I liked that. I liked that there's high stakes. There is the creeping horror of something wrong, sometimes in the scene or not in the scene at all, but like it's always like a part of the narrative of something bad will happen if I don't do this right, if I don't get the information, if I don't like look into this as much as I can, so on and so forth. And with Melancholy Weave, uh, it is a bespoke horror. So that's what I'm really good at, which is like, hey, I'm going to ask you a few questions. We're going to make a character. I made a concept of a story already, and I want to see how y'all fit into it. And then I will make something personal to your characters and what they're going through. So each, like for the Melancholy Weave, each chapter had at least three potential, like skeletons of like abominations or horrors or just normal people bothering them, and then they built on top of it, and then one fit more than all the three of them, let's say. Or some didn't even have one, and they just made a bad guy. And I was like, oh, I like this guy. I like whoever this is. And it was meant to be a reflection of whatever they're going through, a representation of how they can handle it or escape it, or accept it, or give into it. Because a couple of people chose to give in because of the flirtation with it. So, an example being Artist Block, which is chapter 4. Two artists that had the same muse. It's a queer story. And like they both love this person in some way, shape, or form, whether it's just their body or they wanted a deeper relationship. And then they suddenly vanish, like just out of nowhere. No one knows what happens to them. And their art suffers for it because they're two famous artists in New York City, and art columnists are like calling them out for like their shitty new stuff that they're trying to put out without this person. And then they go on a vacation to in the middle of the woods to just try to like get back to in touch with their art, to keep their career going. And they're terrorized by someone or something that uh is saying that they're missing muse. Like, hey, I'm here. It's me. And then I just loved seeing the parallel of one character being like, I'll do anything to still be relevant in the art world. Another one like saying like, hey, art is really important. And I will also give in no matter what to make sure that I stay relevant in the art world. And then as stakes get higher and they realizing they're in danger and they might die, one is like, I don't care if I'm no longer relevant as long as I'm doing art, or I'm nothing without art, so they can just take me. Was like seeing that divergingness over the course of the story was like the content creator's struggle, the would you literally do anything, like, or are you okay with changing how things might be represented for you? It might not be what you think it is. It might not be you're as famous as you used to be, but you're still doing the thing that you love, the thing that you learn to love and care for. And it was just interesting to see that kind of personal horror come out. And that was a collaboration on everyone's front, for that one. That's an example of how personal, how deep, and how like dark the story was, and how like it left people, and this was like stated too for the what was it, the liminal horror game one shot that I ran for Bad House, because it
Yeah.
was bought up at the
Shelter
end of
Within.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, Shelter Within, of like I tell cathartic horror, that feels cathartic at the end, and they never really felt that or expected that for horror, and I'm like, I really don't like when it isn't satisfying, even if your character dies. I want to make sure that like they get a proper send off, even if it doesn't feel like a proper one. I want you to know that every particular choice that you made, whether the dice betrayed you or not, that it led up to this point. It wasn't just like I decided to axe you. It wasn't like whatever that might be. It was did everything you could, and either it got you or it didn't, or the dice were in your like were in your favor or not, or by the skin of your teeth, and you feel it. And the Shelterwood and ending with like everyone's at a diner, and then just like we made it but barely, and like essentially everyone having catharsis. I think only one character might have not had story catharsis, but they said I still felt it, and I thought that was really unique. That's what I like to do. Of like, I want you to feel complete in your story. If we never touch this again, or whatever it might be. So, like, yeah, I think I answered the question. Like, I know,
It,
I
yeah,
talked
I
around it,
mean,
but like,
it 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 does make sense where you want to tell of a story of catharsis um through like hard times where in all honesty it just reflects what we're going through in real life. um
mhm,
you know people are suffering overseas. People are having to deal with all the bullshit here at home. um and I think you do a great job of presenting a, I wouldn't say distraction, but a very pointed way to decompress from the real world. Um,
mhm,
I mean, it's like even outside of like your storytelling, even as a player. I mean, I remember in Midnight Rush, you wanted to tell a story about someone who is suffering and finds that escape, but it comes at a cost, and that cost is very grave. And I think you did a wonderful job kind of doing that push and pull of like, are you going to go through with like this choice that is presented to you or not? Um, and I think you're a wonderful storyteller, both in the GM seat and as a player,
thank
to
you.
do something like um, this is like our last question, but like we can pretty much like go all out from here and just like willy nilly. But and this normally is a question that has like so many answers that we could probably go on. What is the advice that you can give to GMs telling horror stories in TTRPGs? Because I think a lot of people, um, apart from probably mystery, horror is one of the hardest genres to tell.
Yeah.
So what is your advice for GMs who want to tell horror stories that you know have that weight that you were talking about earlier
Mhm.
in like their storytelling?
Let's see if I can. Because I had also was thinking about this. I was like, hmm. Um, One thing that I would say is like find a horror if you like obviously if you're going to be a horror storyteller, I would advise you like consume horror media in some way, shape, or form. Don't just jump into it, obviously. Don't try to run it like it's not a horror. Don't try to run it like it's a fantasy or like a sci-fi, because it's not. It is something different. Tension is key in it. So like unless like, it's a home game and you just want to like shoot the shit. If you're doing an AP for it, having those high tense moments is really important to hold on to for you, your players, and also eventually your audience if you're doing like a pre-recorded or a live. It's really important for that. Um, uh, for So when I say consume like horror media, what I had learned from Quietus specifically, but was aware of it in terms of like horror writing in general, there is like a three acts normally. So like first act is you're presented, or the audience, everybody is presented with what the dilemma is. Um, uh, it seems innocent enough, something starts to feel wrong, and then there's a ramp up into it, and then act 2 is when it presents itself, and like where it works up to finally presenting itself. Near the end of act 2 is when you find out what the thing was. So from act 1 to act 2 is an escalation, like a slow building anxiety, and then the act end of act 2 to transitioning to 3, the anxiety is released because now you know what it is, whatever that might be. And then it goes down from there. And now, like, act 3 is just getting away from the thing or solving the problem. Like, if you want to write it out and simplify it in some way, shape, or form, it's easier to do, obviously, like with a limited series or a one shot that way. But for a campaign in horror, also know that like it might be limited because of the nature of horror. Like people might die, if you want to try to extend the campaign, like you're gonna have to be like comfortable with the fact that like, hey, someone might die, you might have to characters. Um, it's okay also. Like I would say, like it's okay if people die, and they don't get to tell their stories because like that's something that I would say I struggle with. So if like, dang, the dice just weren't in it for you, right? But we'll do our best. But that's just the nature of horror in general. It's okay, continue that, don't be surprised by that, let the story unfold from that death, how people feel after that death, and play into it. But yeah, so like horror is usually told in those acts. I know there's other types of horror, but that's like what a lot of people ended up following. When you want to tell a story, I would advise like sitting with yourself and like describing, or to yourself, and don't feel weird if you're writing it all down, or like have a structure of how it, like you're writing your story down, of like the points you want to hit in the story you want to tell. Like that feel personally, I would say feels personal in some way, shape, or form. If you want it to have substance, something that like matters to you. Yes, it's okay to just have a annihilation kind of story of like, not the movie and book, but like, oh yeah, like the thing is gonna get me. Right, like the thing's gonna like kill me, like that's a like, but how do you make have more depth? Yes.
Can
I think
we do that again? Because for some reason um it cut out.
it
Yeah,
it dipped.
it
Okay,
dipped.
goddamn
Yeah.
you, Discord.
Yeah.
All right. And it was only a matter of time. Like you yes, it's okay to have like those stories that like, oh yeah, I'm scared of death and dying and this thing is going to get me, whether it's a monster or like a slasher killer. But what gives it a little bit more substance or depth of some sort? What makes it personal? It could be anything from like I said, yes, the main character or characters dealt with a loss of some sort. It could be a person, but it could also be like um, loss of their livelihood. It could be a loss of any sort. So don't think that it has to be like a loss of a loved one or family member. And what that changes them in general. It has them thinking a little differently already. So that's one way. But also, hey, yeah, there's Scream, or like we got the ghost face killer coming after you. But what makes it a little bit more personal for somebody, that could literally be that like um everyone's stuck in one location. It could be, which I think with Scream, which makes it entertaining, is we don't know who it is, and now it's becoming a bit. So like people want to like reenact it and find out who it is and who's going to be at this time, and like I want to be in the sequel, like kind of situation. And that's like kind of playing on the story of like glorifying murder sometimes, or like mainstream like content, social media content kind
I
of
think,
thing.
yeah, I think the perfect thing about Scream in particular is that one of the scariest things in the world is a petty person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think, like, just to add on to what you've been saying, um, you can have horror based on the most asinine thing.
Mm-hmm.
Someone said, like, man, that's an ugly skirt. And that could be a catalyst for why your bad guy or your horror is acting out. Um
Mm-hmm.
sure, it's stupid in the grand scheme of things, but that's what makes it horrifying. Is what has pushed this person so far that for a simple comment like that they would start murdering.
It's like, why that? Like, why that one? Because, like, sure, it could be like to anyone outside looking in, like, it might not, like, it is like, why would that bother you? You don't know what that person went through. And, like, I'm like, not
Exactly.
like giving them like they shouldn't do that. Bobby, please don't murder people. But also, like, hey, sometimes it takes a comment, it takes a situation, takes a moment that pushes them over the edge. And then like to like hold on to that anger and then make a whole thing about it where like I'm gonna hunt people down now. Like that's deliberate, that's on purpose. And if there was second chances, it didn't seem like there was any, right? Like, so it's just like, hey, they got built up to that point.
Yeah.
Some of the reasons might be stupid, but make sense to that reason, that person, or it had a reason, even if, again, you still shouldn't be murdering people. But you're like, ooh, I can see why. I can see why that would, like, you would want to do that to get back at people.
And it kind of falls
Um,
into like world building too, that you explain what happened to this person and what brought them to the edge for that one thing, one small thing
mhm.
to set them. Um,
Yep.
and yeah, I it's been wonderful to pick your brain um, as to how you've been telling these stories and like getting into what draws you and how you translate certain things in your life and make them horrifying for your players. Um, this last question, last question, um,
Mhm.
is just a little bit of fun for us.
Oh,
What are
yay.
your touchstones, or what are the things that you can suggest people watch or read or play video games or listen to get inspired? What are your
Ooh.
inspirations?
That's a good one. I one just because I just watched it. And yet don't come for me. Like it was like when it came out, I did not like horror, right? But it's something I've always wanted to watch. I just didn't want to watch it by myself. Um, Jennifer's Body. I just watched it. It is great. Like, please watch it. Yes, it's corny, but it
I
told a
don't think
really cool
anybody
story.
I don't think anybody would call Jennifer's Body corny. I think it's like a very like it's a very important story for people in our age, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I realized that like it came out at the wrong time. Like I think it was ahead of its time a little bit. Because I feel like a couple people have said it. And I was like, what do you mean? And I got it. Like it was like a very black story of like feminine horror, I would say. Specifically how Jennifer is perceived and her friend and the people around them, how they perceive Jennifer. And then like her changing because of what happened to her, and then just like what's wrong with you, and how that could be perceived as the aftermath of someone being assaulted. So like
Yeah.
it was just like I got really mad actually, like because people shat on that movie. I remember them like shitting on that movie when it came out, and I was like, this is a very important story. And no one got it like back
Yeah.
then, and like some people still don't get it. That really kind of pissed me off.
It
So
tackles exploitation of like women's bodies from teenagehood to adulthood. It tackles on the incessant ignorance and like ignoring of like male crimes against female bodies. Like it just is a perfect encapsulation of like the teenage to adulthood experience of a female person, presenting person, or even just that alone is just so so important to see because like we've had a lot of like horror, like what was that, the one with I keep forgetting it. It was like this woman who like thinks that she's possessed, and there was this weird assault scene in a tunnel. I forgot the title of
Oh,
it.
did it come out recently? Was it
No,
like a?
this was like back in the 80s. It
Oh,
was a
maybe not.
French. It was a French film. Um, if someone out there can comment what it is, but
Hmm.
like a lot of it is violence towards women was just written off as just like part of the whole. And I think
Yeah.
Jennifer's Body was like flipped it on its head. But please continue with your list.
But yeah, but
Yes.
that one was very like interesting in general. So like Jennifer's Body, obviously Silent Hill. I would say Nope is a masterclass of horror storytelling. Because
Yeah.
like imagine watching it the first, then this is what I aimed for, and I'm not sure if I achieved it yet, because like I would have to have someone look at like an episode of something and then go back and realize, oh, I see things that are different now. Watching Nope the first time and not knowing what the gotcha was, or what the entity was, or what was going on exactly, and then watching it again, next to someone who never watched it, and then hearing things differently or noticing differently, and then also picking up the background storytelling of things happening that I missed, might have, was an experience that I'm like, how the fuck did he do that? Is how I felt. God damn you, Jordan Peele. Wonderful job.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you get the like Midnight Society, not Midnight Society, Midnight Club,
Midnight Club is
um,
very good. Yep.
please is a really good one. Obviously, like Haunting of Hill House, is I yes, please do that. I'm missing one from that series. I
Midnight
know I
Mass
am.
was really good, and
Midnight
also
Mass,
Fall of
yes.
House of Usher. Midnight Mass was such a traumatizing story at the end, but beautifully done.
Yeah,
Ugh.
it was one of those things. I got really pissed off, and in a good way because of the story, of if it happened anywhere else, like in terms of like a vampire got bought into town. Like, and this is like anything that's not an isolated island. This could be like a town that is very connected, let's say, or a city that's very connected. Anything that's worldly, based off of like in Christianity, like they say like shy away from worldliness is like a Christian tenet for some people. And that island was an example of like keeping it inward, or like we all know each other.
Very
We're
insular.
not going to listen to, we're being insular. Um the belief of like miracles and like all this other stuff, it only worked because of these, like who these people were. The only reason why it lasted as long as it did and it got as bad as it did was because of who these people were and where they were and how isolated they were. Because if it was literally, if just anybody else, like this would not have been as devastating. Like a whole island wouldn't be gone, right? And only two people surviving.
It's so
And that,
haunting too that scene where the whole town is waiting for the sun to rise as they sing. I forgot like
mm-hmm,
what church song that was. It's so haunting and so hard hitting. And that in itself is both beautiful and horrifying. Perfect.
mm-hmm.
Perfect way to.
Perfect way. And I would also say, also another like this is like obviously this is a spoiler time, everybody. So like sorry. Um, my favorite scene outside of that one was someone who we think is going to be the main character forever. I forgot what his name is. The one that like killed someone in a drunk driving accident.
Yes.
Um, he becomes a vampire and then goes to the person that like he trusts more than anybody, the person he's falling in love with, that had a child, and then vampirism like ate that child, like just in general. So finding out that the child was gone was also horrifying. And no explanation whatsoever for her. Um, and then him, I'm wondering if he's gonna eat her or not. And then him saying like taking her out on the boat and then telling her that, like, he knows this is going to be his last day because would rather die than kill someone else again. And then the moment of like the sun coming up, and then I was confused, and then seeing like the girl that he killed forgiving him and then bringing him over to the other side. And then I'm like, oh, he's dead. And then like seeing him burning to ashes was just what, like, that was like such good storytelling for me. So like that one again, I love that very much. um yes, go watch it. Same thing with my favorite one is Midnight Club, just because of like, and I'm really sad that it's not continuing because what the hell, Netflix, why do you do this? um
Exactly.
uh,
Yeah.
Games, Alan Wake, 1 and 2, because that is specifically 2 because they handle things a little better, and storytelling made a lot more sense. But in retrospect, playing 1 again and then playing 2, I was like, "Oh, they were able to map this story together. They were able to like stitch the story." But during the time, I was pissed off because it ended kind of abruptly. It is talking about a town, and things are just odd and weird. It's very like Twin Peaksy, but like I think, which is like I think their touchstone. But telling 2 different stories and finding out that they're threaded together, but you're not sure how yet, and it just keeps on stringing you along, and you're finding out just pieces of what's going on and dealing with some horrifying shit. Someone's stuck in another world that they've been stuck in for a decade, I think,
Mhm.
not knowing what time it is, time, well, like, how much time has passed, and another person slowly losing the world around them while they try to figure it out, and they're the only one that knows things are wrong, because like they have a predisposition of like, hey, I know what the original truth is, but everyone is gaslighting me to thinking like, oh, your daughter's dead, and it was like, no, she's not. I just said hi to her yesterday, and that could be perceived as like, is she grieving right now, and she's just trying to push through, and you doubt her, you doubt your protagonist, and I thought that was, ooh, I hated that actually. I was like, we know the truth, but do we? And then like I didn't appreciate that at all. And let's see. Oh, The Night House and The Ritual, I think they're by the same director. The Night House is like, I think the thing that sparked like melancholic horror for me, being interested in telling those stories, because uh it's a story of someone's husband dying because of content warning, self unaliving, like self unaliving themselves. Um and the note left behind made no sense to us, which is like, she had said that like she didn't believe that there was an afterlife or something like that. And he's like, "Oh, there's definitely something on the other side." And then the note said, "Hey, you're right. There is nothing. Uh nothing is after you." Is it like, no, nothing is no longer after you, something like that, was the note. And then finding out, again, spoiler, nothing is actually an entity. Like nothing is after her. Nothing being like, hey, yeah, I know that like all death comes to me. Everybody that dies comes to me and they fall into the void. And the void is manifested into a person. What the heck? Sorry. That was muted. I'm assuming that the timer went off in terms of like time up of like do not disturb. I apologize. But um in regards to, that was a really good story, and finding that out and then watching it again, same feeling of like, now I get it. Now I got everything. Um and The Ritual, also following that formula of a friend died. People blame the main protagonist for, some people blame the protagonist for what happened, because it was an accident. Uh, oh, and Midsummer was another one. Um, Hereditary. Oh man, like Hereditary is fucked in the head, dude. Like just like
Yeah.
if you want to
It
watch that, by
is.
all means, it is fucked in the head. But like that is worse. They do still follow the 3 act formula, but they never released tension at all that entire film. Like, and it was so uncomfortable the entire time. Midsummer is someone also going through grief of an entire family loss. I think it was all entire family annihilation outside of her.
Yeah.
And it seeing what she saw and finding out what happened, and then her boyfriend being a piece of shit, and like, and then just like her friends not like people that don't even know her, giving her like catharsis, her like grieving with her, not knowing her, and saying like this is your family, and them being a cult. You know what I mean? Like it's just like, it's a really good story, and it like I would like to watch it again because like I felt like I was like I don't know what the gotcha is. I'm very confused. And then when
Yeah.
it did happen, I was like, oh, I tend to normally watch it again, and I didn't, so that I can get it. It was very beautifully done. I think off the top of my head, that's it. The ones that I usually touch on the most if I'm like pulling inspiration.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get more into horror books at the moment to like get like a more well-rounded story, and there is a lot more horror of different backgrounds out there in like that
In
format.
literature, yes, for sure.
Yeah, so like I'm going to try to do that because I'm like, hey, I'm hitting a wall a little bit, and I would like to get some more inspiration. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think to just sum up everything that we've spoken about, horror isn't just something to scare you or just to make something gory. There's definitely a story to be told through the lens of something horrifying and cathartic at and you can always do it on your own. There's always resources, there's always ways. Um, Obviously, safety first comes first, and talk to your players about it. But if you haven't yet, I would deeply suggest running a horror campaign. Um, Thank you so much, Ambrose, for coming with us, talking about horror. Um, if you want to check out the uh, touchstones that Ambrose has spoken to, I would deeply suggest to do so. It will enrich your storytelling palette for sure. How about you tell us where people can find you, where people can like follow you, see your work, uh, and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I am. Been wonderful talking to you all. I am Ambrose, and y'all. You can find all of my stuff in terms of like all my story, like everything that I story told so far on Other Side of Studios, YouTube or Twitch. If you want to see everything, obviously our YouTube account. It should just be like the way the YouTube formats it backslash at Other Side of Studios altogether. And you can find me personally everywhere as SS Ambrose or SS Ambrose underscore. Um, uh, I'm the creative director and storyteller. I do the production and editing for all the things that you see on that channel at this time. Um, uh, we're currently releasing Arcane Core Gifts of Fear, which is a prequel to the main series. And that one, I feeling wise is like more horrifying than the main story, like intentionally so, which is using the archives RPG. So like it's intentionally meant to induce fear, or feelings of fear, because of the nature of the story. And stay tuned for the next part of like book 2 of the Melancholy We Weave, because we will be planning that out very soon, and we're going to be testing out a new system for that. So stay tuned, because we wanted to like not only have the melancholic, but also something more on the Silent Hill side of things in terms of vibe. So we shall see. And that is me. Yes.
Hell yeah! Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. My name again is Fabian. Any all pronouns. You can find me here at Bad House or Rockets and Pens for my personal stuff. Um, Check out Midnight Rush. Ambrose did a wonderful job doing personal horror there. Um, you can check it out on our YouTube. If you
It was
want,
amazing.
it is amazing. And if you want early access to episodes of Kids on the Stoop, check out our Patreon. For as low as $5, you can be a part of our viewers pack, where you can have advanced releases of our pre-recorded shows. Um, that's pretty much it. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.